Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Yael. So I'm Frédéric Giuliano from I'm an assistant librarian / archivist at the McGill University Archives. I'm really happy to be here at Access 2019. So I'm so happy to present you our migration data migration / link data project. So that would be our short outline for our presentation. I'll be starting with some introduction and background. Then Rachel here will be continuing unfolding the project, and Eka will close on some thoughts on Wikidata and link data in the conclusion. So some institutional context first. Well, as you may know, McGill Library and Archives is the home of three main holders of archival material, which is the Ozer Library of History of Medicine, the Rare Books and Special Collections, including the Canadian Architecture Collection, and the McGill University Archives. And the grouping of those three main rare material holders, with the addition of Visual Arts Collection, form the ROAR unit, which mandate is primarily to help showcase the unique holdings within each of the four branches throughout a cross-unit collaboration. And because of that scattered reality, the management of archival acquisition and description had previously been performed according to local practices at each of the different branches. And information existed in many different formats and standards. The state of archival description before implementation of our new AtoM catalog consisted of various databases of many formats, binders of inventory lists, accession records, and even manuscripts finding aids dating from the 1960s. You would understand our desire to put into place a centralized archival management technology that arose from the aims of having the ability of users to search seamlessly across all collections in one place. And this project, we were able to build this project actually because we received a grant from the YCW Canadian Heritage Program. Now, I will be happy to answer any question about that program and its possibilities and limits during the question period or during the day if you'd prefer. So that was a one-year project. 3 departments at the McGill University Library collaborated on the project, which aimed to describe and make available a collection of archival fonds and explore ways of incorporating contribution to Wikidata in the process. Now, partnership across 3 departments was not unusual, but splitting into 3 sections with a rotating supervision was a pilot for this kind of project. So we conceptualized the project as divided into 3 distinct phases. This was really beneficial as the project unfolded because it created clean divisions between the investment of each department, the supervision of Rachel, and task setting of her work. Milestones for each phase also gave us reasonable outputs that helped to reinforce the project's success and what we got out of for the organization. Phase 1 was the archives phase, which I led, which we call unboxing the data, which basically was to update an inventory of our collection with a proper RAD-compliant data set. That was actually first phase and lead to second phase of collections led by collection service, Anna Dysert, which aimed to migrate our new data set to a new AtoM catalog. Then phase 3, led by Eka from Digital Initiatives, aim was to explore new technology through the Wikidata project or collaboration. So it was really a co-design initiative from the very start to the very end. A co-design initiative that respected the strategic direction each department wanted to pursue. Now, I'll let Rachel unfold everything.
So, unboxing the archives. So, phase 1 was our foundational phase. This enabled the ultimate success of phase 2 and 3. I began by being introduced to and compiling resources for the inventory. This included digital and physical accession files, the various archive databases on Microsoft Access, the McGill Access to Memory site, the Guide to the Archives produced in 1985, and then the 1995 update of those, and Wikipedia. The process is hard to describe. Imagine 2 screens, multiple windows. I would flip between resources as one was uploading, and then cross-check everything against the original Access database. Challenges included the change in archival practice. There were different ways of documenting, different archivists over the years, lack of evidence, different practices such as splitting a phone, and duplicate phone numbers. At the end of the phase, I had a list of future actions to complete for the second and third phases, and a list of potential outreach opportunities, such as pre-existing Wikipedia pages that we could contribute to, or visual phone, which would be good for future digitization projects. Phase 2 involved the migration of archival metadata compiled and reviewed in the first phase to the McGill Archival Collections Catalog. The McGill Archival Collections Catalog, or ACAM, is based on access to memory, AtoM, and was recently implemented to bring together McGill's archival descriptions. A couple of years ago, we started looking at implementing a centralized archival management system to serve as a public-facing online archival catalog. Much of the impetus for the undertaking also came from a cyclical review of McGill's rare and special collections units, from which a clear theme had emerged: centralized description to maximize resources and improve discovery of information. The project team chose AtoM for various reasons. AtoM's cross-repository searching shows links between collections held at different McGill branches, improved searching and browsing ability, and seamless delivery of access copies of digitized archival material. The implementation of AtoM was accompanied by a push to get all existing information sources about our archives publicly and remotely findable, and by concurrent initiatives to push discoverability through implementing innovations in our workflows, including adding links to archival resources to wiki platforms. When the AtoM project began, the MUA archival metadata publicly available was 7 individual bespoke databases for private phone, which allowed users to search for brief file lists, the Guide to Archival Resources at McGill, produced in 1985, which was 3 volumes, pre-RAD phone level descriptions, and RAD finding aids, which were on paper and PDF. And the work accomplished before the Young Canada Works project were approximately 350 finding aids migrated from paper and PDF through manual entry by student workers, content manually taken from the text guide and then massaged for import into AtoM, and 1 legacy database which involved data cleanup, standardization for improved RAD compliance and import. The goal of Phase 2 was to migrate AtoM and make publicly available the descriptions kept in the MUA's internal access database. We accomplished this goal by creating a crosswalk from the access database, from bespoke fields to RAD AtoM standard fields. Most of the fields in the MUA's legacy database were able to be mapped into the standard RAD fields used in AtoM, although some custom internal fields from the MUA database did not have a direct corresponding field, which we'll see in the next slide. We exported the data, cleaned it up, and imported into AtoM using CSV via the interface. For the crosswalk, we didn't want to lose any data from the internal database, both to make the transition to using AtoM as seamless as possible and retain all search capability that MUA was used to. This resulted into some irregular fields in AtoM. For example, the MUA custom field size of phone was mapped into AtoM's level of detail field in the administrative area. Another example, MUA used media codes to identify formats of materials. We mapped this into the general material designation field and cleaned up the data so that, for example, a media code of 01 would be given the value of GMD textual record. The exception to this was the media code for photographs. As a solution, we mapped this to the GMD graphic materials and added a genre access point of photographs to phone level record in AtoM. Compared with what we will see with Wikidata later, the CSV template for import to AtoM is readily accessible. As the records were reviewed and published in the archival catalog, they received whenever possible, and as time allowed, standardized subject name and genre access points. This is keeping with a previous departmental decision made when we implemented the new catalog to give Library of Congress subject headings and Library of Congress subject and name authorities using other standard vocabularies as needed for phone and collection level records in AtoM. It is the hope that this will help search discoverability and interoperability with our library catalog. So on to Phase 3. Wikidata is one of the many products in the Wikimedia ecosystem and is sometimes described as a backbone project. Pieces of information from Wikidata populate elements of projects such as Wikipedia. Modes of contribution to Wikidata are not standardized, and there is a lot of debate in the community about what best practices for larger institutions look like. When reaching out to Wikimedians asking for advice, we were often met with comments such as, "Let us know how it goes." I had no previous experience working with linked data or Wikidata, I reviewed everything I could to become an expert quickly. This included the previous McGill project documentation and general Wikidata documentation on how linked data works. My biggest hurdle was how Wikidata organizes the content as a conversation rather than clear-cut instructions. I reviewed the tool forge and property pages to find out what would be best for our project and to understand how linked data statement, property, and value pairs work, and how archival data would be best represented. What really helped was finding an existing currently running project called Wikidata Wiki Project Archival Description based out of France. They had already defined the connection between font, archive, and building, as well as a list of properties to reflect archival terms. Next was taking my expert knowledge and applying it to the crosswalk. With an export of AtoM, I compared the fields present in Wikidata properties, and this led to removing some fields which were text-heavy. For example, scope and content note would not reflect well in Wikidata, so it was omitted. Properties which were Wikidata-specific included description, which we standardized as archival font held at the McGill University Archives, and we added in additional links to McGill AtoM, like P973, which is described at URL. To format the data for Wikidata, we used a CSV, which required finding out the order the properties needed to be in through trial and error. This was done through CSV to Quick Statements tool, which parses a CSV file into a format ready for upload to the tool Quick Statements. Using this tool, I tested 5 fonts to see how the process worked and to address failures, which there were a few. I completed troubleshooting and retesting to ensure the final upload would be the most correct. This included omitting some property value pairs, such as those that described provenance, as they continued to fail without reason. I couldn't figure it out. Once we had a basic understanding of what would work, removing and adding properties as needed, I then ran it through Quick Statements to upload mass batches of data to Wikidata, creating queue identifiers for each font. This took almost 7 hours to do because it was roughly uploading 425 fonts in between other users' uploads. Using the same process, I also added roughly 350 collection creators to Wikidata and added the properties which had initially failed to the existing queue identifiers for the 425 fonts. We wanted to contribute back to the Wikidata community, and we had an opportunity to do so with the property proposal for the GMD. The general material designation was not yet replicated in Wikidata. I searched through AtoM records from European, American, and Canadian institutions, and it predominantly showed up in the Canadian context. I created a proposal, submitted it, and then watched it be discussed and defended in the community, and then accepted and approved. This process took about 3 weeks in total. In addition, I created documentation workflows to help with future projects at McGill, and this outlined the process from start to finish, included commentary on my troubleshooting issues, such as merging queue identifiers as needed. What was really cool was that someone noticed us. This tweet is from late April 2019, a month after the project wrapped. It shows the global Wikidata community on the right, with Canada being the small beige circle, France is in the middle, and then on the left is the Canadian context. McGill and this project's impact is the large blue circle in the middle. And now for Eka.
So this project didn't happen in a vacuum. There was a lot of interest in the McGill community for engaging with Wikimedia projects, and kind of often forwarded by the interests of individuals who were doing it off the side of their desk. Projects included things like wiki editathons, especially art and feminism and One Lib, One Ref, and incorporating Wikipedia and WikiEdu into course content. But 2 projects that really kind of informed this one and helped us frame it in a way that was sustainable and easy to kind of turn into a grant were the Center for Research on Brain, Language, and Music pilot that we'd completed earlier that year, which was funded by a Good Idea grant, which is something that McGill does internally in the library to kind of pilot things and see if they can be turned into something more concrete. And the CRBLM pilot explored ways in which we could take citation information from a group on campus, put it into Wikidata, and then visualize it through Scholia as kind of a representation of the work that they had done and something that they could then submit for additional funding to continue the work of their group. So Wikidata would be this very useful thing for them. And this was a jumping off point for even estimating the number of hours that it takes somebody who has no experience engaging with linked data and engaging with Wikidata to get from point A to point B to be able to make a contribution. Another off-the-desk project that kind of went into this grant was our work to link back and forth between Wikipedia and AtoM, which Rachel spoke about a little bit. But we recognized early on in the process of migrating finding aids to AtoM that the new catalog promised possibilities for resource discovery on the open web. And so using the P485 archives at tag was just a built-in piece of the workflow for working with AtoM. So we learned a few very standard lessons, I think. Things like open source tools fail, quick statements went down during our upload. Oh, thank you. More time learning the workflow early on would have been really great and would have decreased the labor that was repeated, especially during troubleshooting phases, which we should have definitely allocated more time for. And the Wikidata community truly suffers from a lack of documentation, especially around troubleshooting. So in future projects, I think we should really build more time in to flesh out that documentation for the community. We did this a little bit around the property proposal and a little bit in the CRBLM pilot, but again, we kind of ran out of time to really make a major contribution. And another thing that we ran into was just the descriptive needs of archives are not necessarily widely understood in general, come to think of it within the scope of this one community. And although there have been projects like Wiki Project Archival Description, which has a majority of European use cases, there's still a nationalized nature of archival description and practice, which means that we have to advocate for the Canadian context as in terms of the terminology that we propose for projects such as this one. And we have some next steps, none of which have been acted on, but it would be really wonderful to just strike up a Wikibase instance and kind of explore standardizing the way that we engage with this content through that, and especially in terms of content upkeep, because we just kind of threw a bunch of data in there, but we're not really maintaining it or contributing to the ongoing kind of contribution. We are out of time. And finally, we have a lot of opportunity to just increase discoverability, like by wrapping schema.org microdata around identifier fields within AtoM, and just working on creating better bulk workflows for getting AtoM entries into Wikidata. And in conclusion, Wikidata is a really powerful tool for outreach and exposure, and this kind of pilot to grant model was really effective for us, so highly recommend if you're doing exploratory work.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So despite the time alarm, we do have time for questions. Does anyone have a quick question from the floor? Please come forward to the microphones. And we do have a customer.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. My name is Yu-Young Lee from University of Ottawa, and also we start creating Wikidata entries for archive reforms. So my questions, especially for coursework. So how did you describe sort of the extent, especially sort of in Canadian context, we describe sort of the meter of boxes instead of number of papers or number of records. So how did you deal with that type of fields to Wikidata from AtoM?
So for extent particularly, we have not described that as of yet. We decided it was out of scope of project to try to figure out, to focus on it. We did language, we did the inventory number that we had, start time, end time, and then for provenance, it got a little more complicated, but unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to do extent because Wikidata was not letting me put in multiple extents. Yeah.
And because our primary goal was really to link back to AtoM, we tried to include as much information as needed to make it more findable and kind of treated AtoM as like the ultimate finding aid.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, please join me in thanking our presenters once again.